Question number 11. Hundreds of eyewitnesses, including first responders, fire captains and reporters and police, all describe multiple explosions in both towers before and during the collapse.
Number 12. Outstanding video uncovered from the archives shows BBC News correspondent Jane Stanley reporting on the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7 over 20 minutes before it fell at 5:20 p.m. on the afternoon of 9/11. Tapes from earlier BBC broadcasts show news anchors discussing the collapse of World Trade Center 7 a full 26 minutes in advance. The BBC at first claimed that their tapes from 9/11 had been lost before admitting that they'd made the error of reporting the collapse of World Trade Center 7 before it happened, without adequately explaining how they could have obtained advance knowledge of the event. In addition, over an hour before the collapse of World Trade Center 7 at 4:10 p.m., CNN's Aaron Brown reported that the building has either collapsed or is collapsing.
Number 13. Solicitor General Ted Olson's claim that his wife Barbara Olson called him twice from Flight 77, describing hijackers with box cutters, was a central plank of the official 9/11 story. However, the credibility of the story was completely undermined after Olson kept changing his story about whether his wife used her cell phone or the airplane phone. The technology to enable cell phone calls from high-altitude airline flights was not created until 2004. American Airlines confirmed that Flight 77 was a Boeing 757 and that this plane did not have airplane phones on board. According to the FBI, Barbara Olson attempted to call her husband only once and the call failed to connect. Therefore, Olson must have been lying when he claimed he had spoken to his wife from Flight 77.
The size of a Boeing 757 is approximately 125 feet in width. The images of the impact zone at the Pentagon, supposedly caused by the crash, merely show a hole no more than 16 foot in diameter. The engines of the 757 would have punctured a hole bigger than this, never mind the whole plane. Images before the partial collapse of the impact zone show little real impact damage and a sparse debris field completely inconsistent with the crash of a large jetliner, especially when contrasted with other images showing airplane crashes into buildings.
Number 15. What is the meaning behind the following quote attributed to Dick Cheney, which came to light during the 9/11 Commission hearings? The passage is taken from testimony given by then Secretary of Transportation Norman Mineta. During the time the airplane was coming into the Pentagon, there was a young man who would come in and say to the Vice President, "The plane is 50 miles out. The plane is 30 miles out." And when it got down to the plane is 10 miles out, the young man also said to the Vice President, "Do the orders still stand?" And the Vice President turned and whipped his neck around and said, "Of course the orders still stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary?" As the plane was not shot down, in addition to the fact that armed fighter jets were nowhere near the plane, and the Pentagon defensive system was not activated, are we taking that the orders were to let the plane find its target?
In May 2003, the Miami Herald reported how the Bush administration was refusing to release a 900-page congressional report of 9/11 because it wanted to avoid enshrining embarrassing details in the report, particularly regarding pre-9/11 warnings, as well as the fact that hijackers were actually trained at US flight schools.
Top Pentagon officials cancelled the scheduled flight for September 11 on September the 10th. San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown, following a security warning, cancelled a flight into New York that was scheduled for the morning of 9/11.
The technology to enable cell phone calls from high-altitude airline flights was not created until 2004, and even by that point it was only in the trial phase. Calls from cell phones, which formed an integral part of the official government version of events, were technologically impossible at the time.
On April 29, 2004, President Bush and Vice President Cheney would only meet with the Commission under specific clandestine conditions. They insisted on testifying together and not under oath. They also demanded that their testimony be treated as a matter of state secret. To date, nothing they spoke of that day exists in public domain.
And finally, Mr. President, number 20. A few days after the attack, several newspapers as well as the FBI reported that a paper passport had been found in the ruins of the WTC. In August 2004, CNN reported that 9/11 hijacker Zia Jarrah's visa was found in the remains of Flight 93, which went down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. At least a third of the WTC's victims' bodies were vaporized, and many of the victims of the Pentagon inside were burned beyond recognition. And yet visas and paper, passports, which identify the perpetrators and back up the official versions of the events, miraculously survive explosions and fires that we are told melted steel buildings.
So, Mr. President, that's just 20 of many unanswered questions regarding 9/11. Please, prove the sticker wrong.